Welcome to the book review. Today we are jumping into, well, a huge philosophical map of cinema.
It's a big one.
It really is. And our mission here is conceptual. We're trying to isolate these fundamental ideas, the core types of images and signs that really structure how we think about film.
Right. We're not talking about camera lenses or genre conventions. This is about the intelligible content. What is an image actually saying to us before we even get to the words?
And this whole book review is built on some really heavy-hitting sources. We're talking about the philosophy of Bergson and the semiotics of Peirce.
Yeah. So we're treating the film image as a system, a language of its own.
Okay, so to get on the same page, we have to start with the bedrock idea, the one premise this whole system is built on. And that is the image of the cinema is inherently the movement image.
Exactly. And what's wild is that Bergson had this figured out before cinema even really knew what it was. He totally rejected that old idea that you have images inside your head and movement out there in the world.
That they're two separate things.
He said no, they're the same. When you perceive something, it's already a movement image. And here's the key part, he said. Movement itself is indivisible. It's the ACT, the flow of covering space.
Which is different from the space itself, which you can divide up.
Precisely, and you can see the paradox there immediately.
Oh yeah, early cinema walked right into it, like Zeno's paradoxes. They were just stringing together a bunch of static photos, trying to rebuild movement from tiny, divisible moments.
They were making the classic mistake, replicating natural perception instead of creating something new. But then came the great emancipation
through montage and the mobile camera.
Yes. And these weren't just tech upgrades, they were philosophical tools. They allowed cinema to literally pull pure movement out of the things that we're moving.
To emancipate it from, say, the car or the person running.
Exactly. It stopped being an illusion of movement and became movement itself, autonomous and pure.
That's a huge idea. Okay, so we have this foundational movement image. Where does it go from there? The sources say it splits into three classic varieties.
It does, and it all revolves around what's called a center of indetermination.
Which is us.
Basically living things.
It's us. We're indeterminate because there's always a gap, a delay between a perception hitting us and our action responding to it. And in that interval, that's where these three image types are born.
Perception, affection, and action. It's like a loop that mirrors how we exist.
It's a complete sensory motor circuit.
Let's jump into the first one, then the perception image. Now we know perception is never just objective, it's always shifting. How does a camera capture something so slippery?
Well, it starts by getting away from a fixed point of view. This brings us to John Mitry's idea of the generalized semi-subjective image. He called it MIT sign, which is German for being with.
So the camera is just there among the characters, but not tied to any one of them.
Exactly. It's an anonymous floating viewpoint that gives you this feeling of a shared consciousness.
And Pasolini took that idea even further, didn't he? With his free, indirect subjective, he did. He said the camera's consciousness can become totally autonomous. It doesn't just show you what a character sees, it imposes its own vision on the world that reflects the character's inner state.
So the camera is almost thinking for the character.
Or thinking through them. It's saying, I see how you feel, so I'm going to make the world look like you're feeling. And this leads to some really fascinating experiments, especially when filmmakers try to make perception, well, liquid.
The pre-war French school, Vigo Gremion, and their obsession with water.
Yes, because the world of solid objects is rigid, but water, rivers, the sea, even rain. It lets you move to a mechanics of fluids. It allows for a molecular perception where movement gets pulled out of the thing being moved.
So it's not about the clockwork mechanics of a plot anymore.
No, it's more like an environmental sensor. The perception just flows unhinged from any solid body. It's purely qualitative.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's move into that interval. You mentioned the second type, the affection image. This is what happens between perception and action.
It's that moment, that motor tendency. In Peirce's system, this is what he called firstness. It's pure quality, pure potential, an emotion or a feeling before it's attached to a cause or a fact.
And the number one vehicle for showing this is the face, the close-up.
The close-up, absolutely.
Okay. But here's the challenge. How is a close-up of a face philosophically any different from just zooming in on a hand or doorknob? Isn't it just a partial object?
That's the key distinction. The framework says no. The close-up of a face isn't showing you a part of a body. It's abstracting the affect, the wonder, the terror, and presenting it as an entity in its own right.
So the terror itself becomes the subject, not the person feeling it.
Yes, it's lifted out of normal space and time. And this effect is fundamentally bipolar. It has two poles. First, you have the face as an outline, a single unified surface reflecting wonder or admiration. Think of those wide-eyed faces in D.W. Griffith's films, pure reception.
And the second pole
Is the face as dispersed features. This is more intensive. It's desire or solicitation. The source uses Pabst's film Lulu as this terrifying example where her face shifts through the series of expressions, and you see death become a quality of the whole scene.
So the affection image is always pushing towards some kind of limit.
It is. And it reaches that limit in the obliteration of the face, the descent into just pure, singular fear. Bergman is the master of this. He pushes it until faces just merge into this silent, existential dread.
Wow, that's a dark place to end up.
It can be.
All right, let's pull back into something more concrete. Category 3, the action image. This is the engine of classical cinema, right?
This is the engine. It's Peirce's secondness. If affection was possibility, this is actuality. Qualities and powers get embodied in a specific time and place in milieu, and they result in behavior.
The sensory motor link is strong. A situation demands an action.
Exactly. And this breaks down into two main forms. First, the large form, which follows an SAS prime loop.
Situation, action, news, situation.
Right? The situation S acts on the character. They react with an action A, and that action changes everything, leading to a new situation, S prime. It's like an hourglass. The milieu is broad, the action narrows to a point, then the result is broad again.
Sounds like an epic, like a western.
It's the DNA of the Western. Think John Ford, the world at the end of the film is ethically and practically different because of the action taken and the American style of montage. All that parallel editing from Griffith, it's all designed to make that duel, that confrontation, crystal clear.
So how does this form handle failure? If the whole point is effective action,
It sees failure as a pathology, a realist degradation. It's not a crisis of the system, it's a flaw in the character, the born loser in film noir.
like in the asphalt jungle.
Perfect example. The plan is good, the action is organized, but it falls apart because of internal weakness. The sensory motor link breaks because of a behavioral disorder.
Okay, so let's flip that. What's the small form?
The small form reverses the logic. It's ASA prime action situation, new action.
So the action comes first.
The action comes first, and it's almost blind. A character does something, and that small action gradually reveals a little piece of the situation, which then prompts the next small action. It's very local, very elliptical.
And its main tool, its sign, is the index. Why is that so important?
Because the index points to a fact, and in this form, the tiniest difference in an action can reveal a massive gap between two situations. Think of a Lubitsch film. A single glance or a misplaced object tells you everything about a secret affair.
And the purest version of this is Chaplin.
Chaplin is the master of the small form. The physical action of shaking sobs is almost identical to shaking a cocktail shaker. But that tiny indexical difference reveals an infinite distance between despair and celebration.
It forces you to make the conceptual leap.
Exactly.
So these two forms really define classical realism. But cinema didn't stop there. The sources talk about how other national cinemas tackled this.
Right. Because the American model is empirical. It's about action. But then you have the Soviet school. It's all about the dialectic, the qualitatively
Eisenstein.
Eisenstein and his montage of attractions. He wasn't just connecting one action to the next. He would deliberately cut in a totally different kind of image, a statue, a metaphor to pathetize the action,
To give it emotional weight?
and philosophical weight. Think of the stone lions in Battleship Potemkin. Cutting between them makes them look like they're leaping up. That's not a real action. It's a formal dialectical leap from sleep to revolutionary rage.
So your brain has to make the connection.
Your brain does the work. And then you have a totally different approach with German Expressionism. That's an intensive spiritual montage. It's all governed by light.
That sounds much more mystical.
It is. It's this Gothian battle between infinite light and infinite darkness. And their cinema is driven by this idea of the fall. How far are we from total blackness? Or how close are we to blinding light?
And that leads to this idea of the dynamic sublime.
Yes, which is the absolute peak of spiritual intensity in Murnau's fast. You see that blazing red circle of the demon? That's the sublime moment. The spiritual triumph matters more than the physical action itself.
Okay, so for decades, this action image, this strong link between seeing and doing, was dominant. But after World War II, the sources pinpoint a total crisis.
A complete breakdown. The disillusionment was so profound, we just stopped believing that one person's action could meaningfully change the world. The sensory motor link just shattered.
And a new kind of cinema emerged from the rubble.
Defined by a few key things. Situations were fragmentary, chopped up. The links between events were deliberately weak, and the voyage form became central characters just wandering, searching.
They're tourists in a reality that's falling apart.
Totally. And this new cinema was hyper-aware of cliches, and it mostly just condemned the whole idea of a plot.
The first to really discover this broken world was Italian neorealism around
1948. Yeah, Rossellini de Sica. They found a reality where action was just constantly interrupted. In Bicycle Thief, the search, the voyage is constantly broken up by chance, often symbolized by the rain. Rain becomes the sign of the idol. That interrupts
and the space has changed too.
completely. They gave us the any space whatever. Wastelands, ruins, urban sprawl, spaces with no history, no clear coordinates, where action can't get any traction. And a decade later, the French New Wave picks up this thread.
They do, and they define their cinema by the idea of faire faux,
Making false.
literally making false, Godard Truffaut. They gave us intentionally clumsy fights, badly aimed gunshots. That failure to perform the perfect action was the whole point. It was a new kind of realism, the realism of failure.
So if the action image is dead, if secondness has collapsed, what comes next? This brings us to the mental image. Peirce's thirdness.
And thirdness is all about relations, about law. The mental image goes beyond behavior and looks at the abstract architecture of the situation itself. And the master of this, according to the sources, is Hitchcock.
Hitchcock perfected it for him. The action, the who'd in it, was the last thing he cared about. He was obsessed with the fabric of relations around the action.
I like weaving a tapestry.
It's the perfect metaphor. In Rope, the murder happens right away. The rest of the film is just watching this fragile web of relations between all the characters stretch and start to break. That web is the image.
And this mental image has its own science, right? The demarc and the symbol.
Exactly. A demarc is when something violently leaves its natural category, the birds, and the birds' goals are supposed to be peaceful. When they attack, they cross a literal demarcation line in the natural order.
And the symbol.
The symbol is one concrete object that holds a whole web of abstract relations. The key in Notorious, that one little key connects the spy, her husband, the mission, the love affair. It holds the entire relational structure in one object.
It's so much more complex than the simple cause and effect of the old action image.
Infinitely more.
This has been an incredible journey. We started with the basic movement image, broke it down into perception, affection, and action, and then watched the action image collapse, giving rise to this complex, abstract mental image.
And what's so fascinating philosophically is that everything we've talked about still only gives you an indirect image of time. Time is always deduced from movement, from montage. It's translated.
It's not time itself.
It's not. The sources suggest there's one final stage beyond movement itself, the time image. Images of pure duration, pure change.
So here's the final thought then. If everything we've seen from the close-up to the car chase is still just a translation of time, what would a direct image of time actually look like? What happens when cinema can finally capture pure duration, completely divorced from the need for an action or a body moving through space? That is the knowledge still waiting to be unlocked.